Hey, before we get to the show, I want to do a quick shout out and a thank you to Kravit Inc. for sponsoring the podcast. I want you to know that it's time to discover luxury for less with Kravit Furniture's popular upholstery trio, the Jazz, Porter, and Taylor. Now, with improved pricing and faster production times, these stylish frames are available with a 6-week turnaround. Can you imagine furniture in 6 weeks? Kravit's exceptional service combined with great pricing makes them the perfect choice for your next interior design project. Go to kravit.com to learn more and sign up for your design trade account today. Welcome to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know that we're doing something a little different over the next several months. We're bringing back the most downloaded, the most talked about episodes from the last 9 years of A Well-Designed Business. These are the episodes that built businesses, that sparked aha moments, that turned you into an action taker. Now, if you're wondering why we're revisiting these episodes and what's changing with the show overall, well, I walk you through the full vision in our April 25th, 2025 episode titled The Big Shift, What's Changing on a Well-Designed Business and Why. That episode is linked for you in the show notes. Now, a quick heads up. These episodes are airing as they originally did. That means the music might sound familiar or it might be vintage. That means the event dates will definitely be out of date that I talk about. And it also means that any offers that are mentioned may or may not be valid still. But the insights, still golden. So whether it's your first time hearing this episode or your 5th time hearing it, there's something in this conversation for you right now in this season of your business. So here's the show. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. Today, Kim Dawson joins me. Kim is a business strategist whose particular superpower is helping service-based businesses figure out their ideal pricing formula, meaning how to figure out what you should be charging by the hour or by the project in order to be profitable. Kim is a lifelong entrepreneur who has started multiple businesses of her own, including a local health and fitness studio and also all the way to co-founding a software startup. She is experienced in both locally focused service-based businesses as well as online product-based businesses. And now Kim is a business strategist who enjoys working with other business owners to help them grow successful and profitable businesses of their own. I want to tell you too, there is no question if you're new in business that this conversation will be very impactful for you. It'll help you get started on the right foot. But if you've been in business 5, 15, 20 years, and you know that you have never actually sat down and figured out at the beginning of the year what financial goals that you want to reach at the end of the year, then this show is for you. Because, see, I know from way before having this podcast that so many people own businesses that, quote unquote, seem to be successful. Meaning, year after year, your business is pretty steady, your pipeline is fairly full, you have employees, they get paid, you get paid, you have your finances on QuickBooks or a spreadsheet, it all mostly looks pretty good, and you have some rough spots here and there, but all in all, you get through and you do it again a year later. But the thing is that I know that there are challenges and problems that happen when you ignore this part of your business. So things like, if I were to say to you, do you know exactly what you will make in your personal salary this year? And sometimes a business owner will say, well, it sort of depends on how things go, right? If we have a good year or a bad year. And then I might say, what if you wanted to make more money this year? Do you know how to set about doing that? And they'll say, well, I guess I should go to more networking events. Or a business owner might say to me, I am absolutely swamped. I'm working 50 hours a week. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'll say, well, is it time to hire? I think it is, but I have no idea if I have enough money to afford and pay an employee. Or someone will say, I would just love to get out of my home office. I can't think straight there anymore. I've grown out of it, but I'm scared to death because I have no idea if I can cover the rent in a studio space. You see, these are challenges of seasoned, successful-ish business owners, okay? Because you're not bleeding at the seams. You're not looking for your next client. You are actually in business. But there's a difference between being in business and being successful and actually planning for it, okay? And I want to be very clear. This is not just the interior design industry. No, ma'am. No, sir. This is across the board. I don't care if you are a candle maker, a candlestick maker, a baker, a bricklayer. This happens in small businesses all the time. And this is exactly why so many small businesses fail, because they'll just get to a point of exhaustion or one catastrophic situation, whether it be a health crisis, an actual financial crisis, it be, I don't know, somebody, car goes through the front door of your showroom or something, right? It does, like one crisis upsets the apple cart because there is not a plan in place, okay? But this, absent that crisis, years and years and years go by, okay? And you know what? Okay. Years and years go by. But wouldn't it feel so much better to feel in control, to understand what you will make, how you will make it, how to plan for it, and how to make adjustments in the moment, in the week, in the day, in order to keep and stay on track to goals that you set thoughtfully at the beginning of the year? All right. So, and if you happen to be listening to this show not on the first week of January 2020 and sometime in the middle of the year, I promise you, you can draw the line in the sand at that exact moment. You do not need to wait until the first of a new year in order to tackle this problem. Okay. And I'll just remind you of Alinda Morris's episode. She said that she finally realized that every single week that she did not cover her cost to be open, her expenses to be in business through her billable hours, she finally realized that in every one of those weeks, she was actually borrowing money from her family. Okay? So I just want you to take a look. And like I said, in my experience, yes, newer entrepreneurs do this, but it's so much more often that it's the entrepreneur that's in business 10, 15, and 20 years that pretends that because everything sort of gets done, that it's okay. And I don't want you to do this. How about we end this now? Okay? How about in 2020, you decide to pay yourself a respectable salary based on your current level of experience and expertise? And how about in 2020, you make a profit after you've paid yourself and all of your bills? How about that? I want that for you. Okay? Let's start today. And Kim Dawson is exactly the lady to get us started with this. Take a listen. Hi, Kim. Thanks for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, Lynn. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad you're with me today, too, Kim, because we're going to have a conversation today about not just encouraging my interior designer buddies to charge what they're worth, the way my friend Nancy Ganzekaufer always tells and implores us to do, but and not only to set their rates at what they're worth, but to figure out what they should charge and how to come to that number and how to then execute from that number. So we had this conversation way back, Kim. I want to tell you, way back in the beginning of the podcast. I'm at like 500 practically episodes at this point when I'm talking to you, but back at episode number 60. So if you are new to the podcast, we had a very similar conversation to this with Krista Cooper. But you know what I always tell you, you need to hear things. What do we say in marketing? The 7 times rule. You have to come across somebody 7 times before you remember them when you go to do something. But I also know it's just for making a change in our business. We have to hear it over and over with a little different spin, a little different nuance before we go, okay, uncle, I'm going to do it too, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yes. So talk to me. I first of all, you're a business strategist. You focus on the financials. You work with all different types of industries. You have worked with interior designers before, so I'm happy to know that. But you also work with wedding event planners and corporate planners and floral designers. These are industries that probably have very similar billing models. But more than that, both you and I know that business is business. And the stories that we tell ourselves as business owners and the traps and the pitfalls that we get into as business owners really are not specific to any one industry, right? Do you find this to be true too, Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that when most of us start our businesses, we start them because we found something we really love doing and we want to be able to make money doing it. But that doesn't necessarily make a business owner a business person, if that makes sense.
It totally does.
So you need to, when you're going into business for yourself, you need to excel at whatever the services that you're providing or whatever you're selling. You need to excel at that, but you also need to learn how to run a business. And that can be very tricky for a lot of business owners. One, because they might not want to do it. They might just want to get paid for what they do and they don't want to think about all the other stuff. So I think it could be a very difficult thing for a lot of business owners.
Well, and I agree. And it's so funny because we're not going to focus on this on the conversation today, but I just want to take a moment here because I have said this over and over again when I meet designers at live events, and sometimes I've mentioned it on the podcast, is if that is so true for you, if you really do want to focus on the design, then go be the most amazing senior designer for a principal and make that principal's world so happy, right? And don't run the back end. Like there's no shame in that. There's no like, oh, well, I'm not my own interior design firm. I'm not a self-employed interior designer, because we all need the people who are super good at their jobs and want to show up every day and just work in that superpower of being a designer, right? Don't you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. And I think that, this is my take on it anyway. I think that there's a lot of pressure right now for people to be entrepreneurs, for people to run their own business. And it really isn't necessarily for everybody. I think just like what you're saying, if you really want to focus on this one thing that you want to do and you want to do it really, really well, you can go work for somebody else and do it and make a consistent paycheck. You won't have a lot of the same stresses that an entrepreneur would have, and you get to actually do what you love to do. Mm-hmm. So it's really a win-win. And I definitely think it's a great path to consider if you don't love the business side of things. And I think we have to individually gauge what that means. We all have things in our jobs that we don't like. And every business owner, every entrepreneur might love owning their own business, but it doesn't mean that they love every aspect of that. But that's a little bit different than really having this philosophy that you don't want to be bothered with running the business, exactly. Right? Those are two different things.
100%. And that is true because, you and I as entrepreneurs and many of my friends listening, we know exactly that feeling that this went wrong today, this blew up today, this is really a big deal today, but I wouldn't trade it for anything on the planet. I love that sense of having control over what I'm creating. I love the ability, I would rather work a 15-hour day and at the end of it feel accomplished because I was creating something that I know I'm meant to do. However, I need the people around me that work for me. That's what I know I need, right? So anyway, so I just wanted to say that because you did mention it, and I know there are so many talented interior designers that are listening that aren't self-employed yet. And just because I love that they come here to learn about the business side, it doesn't mean that it is for everybody. And that's just needs to be out there. Okay, so, but we do have plenty of interior designers listening that are working very hard, do have the what it takes and the desire and the drive and the goal to be self-employed, but maybe I call it like, a hamster wheel, running in a circle and feeling like, when do I figure it out? When do I know? When I sit there in December, how do I plan for what my revenue is going to be for the following year? How do I arrive at those numbers, and how do I make a plan to earn money as opposed to just get up every day and execute the work and wonder what's going to happen? Because that's really the difference between, I always say, if you're not making money at your business and you don't have a duplicatable system for the way you do it, you don't have a business, you have a you. Right. And I've listened to you on your podcast, and you said, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. And I was like waiting for you to say my word, you. And I'm like, oh yeah, hobby, that's her word. So, but we agree on that. So tell us what's your method and your strategy when you work with entrepreneurs to helping them wrestle that I'm working every day and I'm not sure where I'm going.
Yeah. And I think, backstepping this a little bit, I think what tends to happen when people first launch their business, when they get that idea and they say, you know what, I'm going to run with this, I'm going to start this business. The first natural feeling that we all have is, okay, now I need to make money. And people will sometimes put that thought before the actual business plan, before they actually know what they're about to do. It's, okay, I'm going to be, and in our case, we'll say, okay, I'm going to be an interior designer. Okay, I got to go make money. Mm-hmm. And that's really the first mistake, because yes, while you do need to make money, obviously, the plan needs to come first, because what tends to happen is when you go out there to start, building up your clientele, you're trying to get clients, if you don't have a plan, you're going to take anybody that comes along. And when you do that, you might not be realizing that you're setting your business up in a way that you don't have a specialty or you don't have a certain market, and therefore it makes it more difficult to actually meet your revenue goals. So to give you a little bit of an example of this, when you decide to open your business, if you say, well, I'm going to be an interior designer and I'm going to do it for everybody. I'm going to do commercial, I'm going to do residential, I'm going to do condos, I'm going to do single family, I'm going to do everything. How do you market yourself?
Right.
How do you don't even know where you're going to be spinning, your head spinning. You don't even know where to begin because you're trying to put yourself everywhere. And that is very difficult to do. It's very timely, and it's usually very ineffective. Where if instead you say to yourself, you know what, I really love office buildings. I'm going to completely make up something here, but see, I really love office buildings. I love working with business owners. I'm going to specialize in commercial design. And you know what? I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to say I'm going to work with businesses that have somewhere less than 50 employees, and their offices look like this, and you start building up these ideas about the type of business that you want to run. Once you've done that, it makes it so much easier to build out not only the business plan, but the financial plan, because now you can start saying, well, okay, these are the people I'm working with. So what is their typical budget? How much are these businesses spending on monthly lease payments, or if they're buying a building and redoing it? What do their budgets look like? And then it's easier for you to actually know what your budgets are going to look like. So believe it or not, this is really a first step that I think some people need to be taking before they go into the full-on plan.
I love it. I love it a lot. I mean, we say this on the show all the time. I mean, we had Fred Burns, you're only. What is the only thing that you can do? What is the thing that makes you unique? And it informs so much. It informs our marketing. It informs on, who we attract. It informs on who we target. It informs, and to your point now, you're saying it's going to inform how we set and strategize for our revenue goals.
Exactly.
Okay. So go ahead, take us through it.
Yeah. So that's where I start. So we're going to assume, to the listeners, we're going to assume that you know your market, you've identified them, you know exactly who you're going after and who you want to work with. So the second step is to really take a look at your business and figure out what it is that you need to run it successfully, and for it to look the way you want it to look. And here's what I mean. If you say, well, you know what, I would like to have a certain salary every year that I pay myself, and you come up with that number, and that number is different for everybody. But most of us have a number in mind of, if I made this much money each year, I'd be pretty happy. I'd have enough to go on vacation once or twice a year. I'd have enough for, this house that I want, this car that I want, whatever it is. You got to know what that number is. And you write it down and you set it aside. That's your desired salary. And then you have to look at another number. And then the other number is, well, what are all of the expenses that come with my business? You have all different kinds of expenses. You have expenses that come every single month. Those are the ones that you spend on your software subscriptions, which many of us have a lot of. If you're subscribing to a design software, if you're subscribing to an online scheduler, whatever it is, these numbers add up every month, right? Mm-hmm. You have maybe professional insurance that you're paying for. You have taxes that you're paying for. You have a new website that you've got to maybe keep up with and redesign every few years. So you have all these different expenses. You need to know what they are. And then you take that number and you set it aside. So now you got two numbers. And then the third number, I always call it the savings number. And the savings number is that when you are in business for yourself, you have to remember that compared to an employee, you're responsible for all your own taxes. You don't have an employer that's paying half of your Social Security and half of your state and all that kind of stuff. You have to pay all of your own taxes. And you have to pay for your retirement, because maybe if you're working for an employer, they have a 401k, they have all these things. You don't have any of that now. So you have to set money aside for that too. And what about when new expenses come up? So let's say you want to grow your business. You can't grow it unless you have some savings in the bank to say, oh, I really want to do this whole new website redesign, or I want to launch a whole new product with my design services. You need to have the funding for that. You need to have some money set aside. So I call that third number the savings number. And what I recommend people do is you say, okay, well, here's my desired salary, number one. Here are my annual expenses. That's number two. And number three is going to be a little bit extra to cover the savings, the retirement, and all that. You put those three numbers together and you come up with this one lump sum number. And that is your annual revenue goal. That's what you need to be bringing into your business every year in order to pay yourself, to pay your bills, and to put money aside and pay for your retirement. And then from that number, we work backward. So are you with me so far?
I am. And I am. I totally am. What I would love to do for anybody listening that might be thinking, okay, not 100% sure here. Let's plug in something. Let's do, let's say that our desired salary is $75,000, right? Let's say I call it the cost to be open number. What did you call it? All of your expenses. I call it my cost to be open number, right? Yeah. So let's say our cost to be open number is $35,000. Does that seem
sounds good.
reasonable?
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah,
okay.
But I'm adding these numbers as you speak. I'm putting them right in the calculator.
Okay, good. And then we want to put aside for, like you said, savings. So that's a retirement 401k, personal development, right? You want to attend a conference. You want to hire a business coach. You need to do your website over again. You don't want to be doing these things on the fly or on a credit card. You want to have a little bit of money put aside for that. So what are we saying if our desired salary is 75 and we're saying our cost to be open number is 30 grand? What is a reasonable amount that you would think that business owner should put in their savings category, Kim?
Yes, that's a great question. So the formula that I use And you can play around with this formula a little bit, but what I say is you take the average of the first two numbers. So for example, with your example of the salary at 75 and the expenses at 35, that comes up to $110,000 a year. So half of that would be 55,000. So I would add 55,000.
Okay. So this is the good part, right? Because we want to have our little formulas to work with. Okay. So now what we're going to do is you're going to add these numbers together.
Yep. And we have a total of 165,000 a year.
Okay. So that is the amount of money that we got to bring through the front door to meet the expenses that we have for ourselves, the savings plan we have for ourselves, and our cost to be open number.
Absolutely, yes. So we have 165. So that's where we're starting.
Right.
We're not really starting, but that's where we're going to start to move backward.
Right.
So we move forward to move backward. So then from that number, and this is where it gets tricky, is you have to have a little bit of experience in your business, or at least doing what you do, to know how many clients can you work with at one time, or how many clients can you take on per year.
Okay. And let me just ask you something about that. What if you are talking to one of my brand new baby designers? And Kim, so you know, I use this term with the most love I possibly can. And what it means is that it's a designer that's probably in business, either about to launch or under 2 years. Okay. So once we've got 2 years in business, what I can tell you is my audience has been referring themselves to me as toddler designers. Okay.
Right.
So baby designer doesn't mean that you are 25 years old. It doesn't mean you're 65 years old. It doesn't mean you have 2 employees. It doesn't mean you have no employees. It doesn't mean you have 30 employees. It means that you are a brand new business principal. So so you say that you kind of have to know what you can handle and what you can project. How do you help a brand new baby designer have that conversation? I'm just curious.
Well, I think if I'm understanding what you're asking, are you suggesting how do they have the conversation with their potential clients about their rates?
No, you said.
Or how do they actually even know what this number should be?
Right. No, what you said was from that number, you sort of need to have a little bit experience, because where we're going from that number to go backwards is you
Right.
sort of need a little experience to have an idea of how many clients you can potentially have and how many you can handle at a time. You mentioned that.
Right.
So if I graduated 6 months ago or I've just changed careers. I'm 50 years old and that's it. So I guess we've got some experience. We've probably been side hustling a little bit, whether we're a recent graduate or we're a side hustler or change of career. You just evaluate. Are we talking about our workload? Like I'm 45 years old. I've got 2 kids in middle school, and now I'm going to put my stake out as a principal, self-employed interior designer, and I can handle 3 projects a month. Is that what you're saying? And still manage my life? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yes, but actually you bring about a very good question, and that is that when you choose these numbers, if you're choosing a full-time salary, if you're choosing a full-time expense load and all of that, the assumption is that you're working full-time.
Mm.
If you are not working full-time, then you would have to adjust your numbers. So, sort of a silly example, but you're not going to make $1 million a year working 5 hours a week, right? I mean,
Right.
we know this. So making those adjustments, but to your point, yes, it's understanding, well, what really is my workload? And everybody has some level of experience, as you said. So if somebody's just graduating from school, I'm sure that they learned a little bit about this from their professors,
Right.
from
Or
people that they networked.
internships or something.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. You should have some sort of an idea that if you're going to take on a project, about how long do you think that project is going to take? So
Okay.
if you were going to, and I'll make up something and you can add in from your experience, but if you were to take on a job of doing a 5-bedroom home and completely remodeling the entire house, how long would that take? How many hours would that take?
Mm-hmm.
Would you be able to work with 3 clients at one time, and each client you're going to give 10 hours a week to? What does it really look like? And some of that might requires some estimates and some guessing. And then as you go along in your business, you tweak and you change. You
Right.
don't need to know all the answers right away. You don't open your drawers and know everything. You're going to learn things along the way. It's okay to make mistakes. But the point is to have something in the beginning to give you a little bit of a platform.
Okay. I love it. And I have to say, if you really just don't know, we have a community here. Reach out and ask one of us, right? Like ask a colleague, and just say, I have not done a 5-bedroom complete renovation remodel before. And I understand your experience and your expertise is different mine, but throw something at me. You know what I mean? Right. So, okay. So here we are. We've got our annual revenue goal of $165,000, and we're going to now reverse engineer this salary. Tell us how we're going to do that, Kim.
Yes. So I think the easiest thing to do is to come up with some average number of how many clients you expect to work with over the course of the year. So that's I understand, a hard number to estimate, but you start with something. So if you say to yourself, well, if I take on, what's my average project? If you say my average project is a 4-bedroom house and I'm going to do 3 rooms in the house, whatever would work in your industry, you'd say, okay, well, that's my average. I could probably work with 2 clients like that every month, say.
Okay.
And you start there. So that would mean that, okay, well, maybe that's 24 clients a month. But I would actually say the number would be less, because one of the things that you have to take into account when you're figuring out these numbers is you're not going to work every day and every week of the year. You're going to take time off for vacation. You're going to take time off perhaps for family or other responsibilities. So you have to keep that in mind when you're coming up with these numbers. So if you say to yourself, well, ideally, I would like to work with 2 clients a month. I'm probably going to only work 11 months out of the year, not the full 12, then that would be 22 clients a year. Okay. That would be at the most.
Okay.
Right? Now, let me ask you, how accurate of a number do you think that is?
Well, it actually will vary greatly by the size of the firm. So I would tell you that a larger firm, some of the firms like House of Funk and Laura Umansky, firms like this, they will often have, say, 3 to 5 big projects, $500,000 and up projects, and then maybe anywhere from 8 to 15 smaller projects that are, maybe they did the $500,000 project for a particular client 4 years ago, and now that client wants a refresh in X amount of spaces, right? So they're not going to come in and just pick paint colors for somebody, but they do have those lesser. So that's one level that we've got, and that would be high performing firms. And then we also have firms that are maybe a solo with maybe one assistant, maybe a virtual assistant. And it's probably a model very similar to what you're saying, anywhere from 15 to 22 clients over the course of a year. And each client could represent anything from a $5,000 or $10,000 project up to a $35,000 or a $40,000 project, right?
Exactly. And that's the point that I was making before when I said the first thing you need to do is know your market, because it's exactly what you're talking about. Are you going to build your business around the $500,000 jobs, or are you going to be the solopreneur with the maybe assistant and build your business around the smaller jobs?
Right.
And that's when this comes into play. So let's just say we're going to use a number that you're going to be somewhere in between this, and perhaps you take on 10 clients a year.
Okay. Then
you would know that, okay, on average, I need to be bringing in $16,500 per client. And you know that that number is going to go up and down based on the job, because like you said, some jobs are going to be bigger than others. But at least it gives you a benchmark of where to start. And the other thing too I would mention is, at least from my experience, most of the people I work with, once they really have defined their market, their jobs might be a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller, but they're not usually too drastically different.
Right. You set your niche. Maybe you're a kitchen and bath specialist, and so you're typically doing $75 to $200,000 kitchens over and over and over. Or you are, maybe you specialize in the design and decoration where you don't get involved in renovation, and you're happy places to come in and just wipe the slate clean with the furnishings and the decor and make it gorgeous. Right. So there's 1,000 different models in this industry. It's insanity.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's really taking a look at that. And these numbers are not ground in stone. They're numbers to give you a guideline. So for example, let's say we're going to go with this and we're going to say, okay, well, your goal is 10 clients a year and each job is going to average around 16, 17,000 a job. If somebody comes to you and their budget is only $5,000, you may want to pass on that job. You may want to say, well, if I take on this job, you're going to take me an entire month of my time, and I really need to be making close to $17,000 in a month, and you're going to take up a full month at only $5,000. I need to pass on this job.
Okay.
So I think that's where it's really helpful to have these benchmark numbers. Now, if that $5,000 job came along and it was a 1-week job, then you could say, oh, sure, it's only going to take me a week of my time. Sure, fine, I'll do it. But at least it helps you understand what your time is that you're putting in and how that's relating to what you need to be making in order to meet these goals.
I like that distinction there. I like that distinction a lot, because whether we're talking about our normal budget for a project is $1 million and somebody comes with a $50,000 project, and we usually do $1 million projects, what we're doing is we're also taking into account if I need to make X amount of dollars per month, and this is way, way under, but I can do it in a tiniest portion of that month, 1 week, 3 days, whatever it is. Now that's a different evaluation process. You don't have to say no. All the other things have to be in line. It has to be your target market. It has to be I guess it's sort of like when I mentioned the bigger firms where they will do a refresh or a redo a smaller project for an existing client. They know it's not going to take them 6 months to execute. It's their good client. They're not going to make them go find another interior designer, right?
Exactly.
And so, but there's that evaluation there that it's the combination. If it is my repeat client, it is my target client, I already know, like, and love, get along with this client, and this doesn't meet my typical revenue per project, but it will only take me 1 month as opposed to 6 months, which is my typical time per revenue project, right?
Exactly.
Love it.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yeah, so you really need to be, I guess, aware of when somebody does come to you, when you have that potential new client, you need to be able to evaluate how much time is this job going to take me, and how many other clients can I be working with at the same time? And then overall, is this going to help me reach my goals?
I love it. I love it. It's it's funny is because it's very easy for me to understand when I think about the speaking opportunities that come my way. I turn around and say, okay, am I driving down the block in New Jersey, or am I losing 2 days work with traveling out of town? And, yada, yada, yada. It's not about the hour that I'm going to be in your presence with your organization, right? It's all the other stuff. And what is that total picture look like, and is it worthwhile? And so it's having that same evaluation applied to a design project so that you don't get your revenue goals skewed. You don't wake up in 3 months or 6 months or 12 and you're off target, right?
Exactly. Yes. And it's great that you mentioned that, because one of the things that makes me think of is how often I have seen designers forget to be factoring all that extra stuff in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it is literally everything that you have to do for your clients needs to come into your pricing. Right. And everything that you need to do to run your business that you can't directly bill to your client, you still have to bill your clients for, because your business can't exist without doing those not direct billable hour tasks. Right. So all the travel, all of the extra stuff that you do, it's all got to come into play into that pricing model.
Right. I love it. Okay. So now when we have this average, and we've well established, it doesn't mean that you need to get 10 projects at $16,000.
Right.
This is just our benchmark. We have to bring 16.5 in a month, or we need, 2 months in a row where we did 60K. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to figure it out one way or another. And this is why I'm always saying, just like we do at Window Works, that we look at our sales numbers every single day. We don't wait until the 30th of the month to see if we're on target. We literally know how much money we have to sell that month based on our cost to be open number and based on the cycles that we've witnessed in our business and taking data in for 38 years. And we attach a number to every month. We say, okay, January, we have to do $190,000 in gross revenue. February, we have to do 170. May, it's like 320. Like, it's very, very different because we know we can push the pedal to the metal in May. But January 1st, we're looking at it. January 5th, we're looking at it. We're dividing it by the number of days. And we're like, okay, we have 20 days left and we have to sell this much every day to hit 190. And so when we get to the third or fourth month, then we're like, oh, we've not only hit every number, but we've exceeded each number. And now at the end of the first quarter, we're in a gross revenue gain of $100,000. Well, because we're all lunatics at Window Works, we pretend that doesn't exist and we just keep firing through, right? But if you were a solo and you were just looking at this, you really could say to yourself, I'm doing good. I'm ahead. And my recommendation is to always keep pressing and then take the advantages and the fruits and the relax at the end if that's what you want to do, because you don't know what happens in the last quarter ever. But the idea is that we're looking at this all the time, right, Kim?
Yes. And another thing I would add to that, not only are you looking at it all the time and making sure that you are staying on your numbers and on track, but it's a really great thing to be comparing from year to year.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because first off, every industry is seasonal. Mm-hmm. And there are going to be certain times of the year where people are going to hire you more than at other times of the year. And it's very helpful to be able to go against last year's numbers and the year before and even the year before to say, well, okay, what patterns do we have going on here? All right, well, every year in February, we tend to dip about 20%, but then in May, we pick up another 30. And if you see that pattern year after year after year, you can breathe a little bit easier. You still stick to the course, but you breathe a little easier. When you need to start getting concerned is when you have this pattern that happens year after year, and all of a sudden you're in year 4 and you're not following the pattern anymore. You're not meeting the numbers when February traditionally has been a very great month and you haven't sold anything. It should cause an alarm to go off of, whoa, what's going on here? Why are we not meeting the same goals this February that we did the past 3 years?
Absolutely. Well, we use this device at Window Works since 1982. I've said it 1,000 times. My listeners are like, okay, she's going to tell the story again, right? I mean, I literally could go into my Excel spreadsheet right now and tell you what we did in October of 1985. I can tell you May of 1992. And we do that every year in December. My husband and I, we sit together with Kimberly, the other people in our sales team, and we take the previous 3 years and we say, okay, we actually do it 2 different ways, Kim. We look at each month individually. So we'll look at January. We'll say, okay, January 2019, 18, and 17. What did we do? We see if there's any anomaly. And if there's no anomaly, we average it out. We figure out what it is, and we account for the goal that we want. We always are pushing it every year. And then we do that January, February, and March. But then we do a second thing. We take the first quarter for the last 3 years, add them together, divide them up, and look at them. Because a business as mature as ours, we're not, if I don't meet my revenue goal in January, I'm not going out of business in March. I have the reserves. So I can meet a revenue goal over a 3-month period without going into a panic. But in the beginning, it was like, if we didn't make money in January and we didn't make money in February, when you're a new business owner, I might not have money to pay bills in March. There's only so far you can push people out. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. It really does depend on how far along in the business you are.
So, okay. So talk to us about how we back into how many hours we work and what we should be billing per hour, because I know that's the next parts of your process here.
Yes, yes. So, and it's so funny with the hourly because it can get very confusing. Sometimes people don't like to get bogged down in hourly rates, and I completely get that. And I also think that it's challenging when you charge clients hourly rates. It gets confusing, and there can be a lot of back and forth. So I usually don't recommend that people get down into the nitty-gritty of charging people hourly. And I would assume that most of your listeners don't charge hourly. They charge by the project.
Actually, it's very, very different. It's the industry, Kim, is moving towards a flat fee to some extent. I just said it on a podcast recently, how it is I feel like after we're interviewing now at the last quarter of 2019, and it has been, I think, the number one recurring conversation in this year 2019 on the podcast, the contrast between hourly versus flat fee. However, I do think there is consensus that across the board that even if you are a designer who has moved their firm to flat fee, which is the trend, they are basing the flat fee on the calculation of the hours at their hourly rate. It's not a fake number.
No. So I'm going to actually talk about both.
Okay.
But yes, and that's exactly what I was getting to is that point, is that regardless of how you bill your clients, you need to know what your hourly rate is.
Right.
Because really it's a guide for you to be able to gauge, am I charging clients enough money? So what I recommend you do is first off, understand that and we're going to use simple numbers, but if you work 40 hours a week, you don't bill 40 hours a week. And I'm sure you've discussed that on the show before.
Right.
What I typically use as a formula is half. So if you're working full time and you're assuming that that's a 40-hour a week, you're going to be available for about 20 hours a week of billable time. The other 20 hours a week, you are spending on marketing, you're spending on admin, you're spending on all other stuff to run your business and to function. So knowing that you've only got about 20 hours a week of billable time, you can kind of divide this out. So I'm going to run some numbers for you. We originally said that our annual revenue goal in our fictitious example was $165,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So if I take that number and I'm not going to consider holidays and all of that. We're going to keep the math real simple. I'm going to divide that by 12. And that's going to give me a monthly goal of $13,750. Okay. Now, if I backtrack that down to hours, and again, keeping it simple, we'll say, okay, there's 4 weeks in a month. And if each one of those weeks I'm working 20 hours of billable time, I am going to divide this monthly number by 80 hours. So the 20 times 4. And that brings me to an hourly rate of $172 an hour. And so here's what that means. That means that when you are coming up with your proposals for your clients, you have to be able to estimate in your mind, if you are doing flat fee, to say, okay, I think this job is going to take me 20 hours or 30 hours or 40 hours of my time to complete this job. So if it's going to be 40 hours and my billable rate is $172 an hour, then that means I need to charge a flat fee of $6,875. Right. So you could do the flat fee, or you could say, well, I'm just going to bill hourly and my hourly rate is $172 an hour. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that, I know sometimes when we get into the numbers, it gets like, okay, what is she doing? I'm sitting here.
No, I think I like it because 20 hours, if you're working full time, 20 hours billable is a reasonable goal, right? Because our other example of maybe a second career mom or dad that has responsibilities for children or parents or things like that, maybe their total hours worked in a week is 20, and now they might only be able to be billable 10. right? So we have to adjust. So I like this way of looking at it. Of course, I can hear in my head my friends saying, well, don't forget we've got product sales, Luann. We're going to make money on markup, on furniture and carpet and lighting and things like that. And then we also have many designers in the last year, 2019, adding e-commerce sites to their websites and so forth. So what's your opinion there? Do you say, hey, just look at that as gravy. Just put that, 35, 40, 50% of product on, and let's just let that add up at the end of the year? Or is there a way that you say, okay, I hear you. Let's figure that into this metric for goal planning?
I am more, and this is a philosophy preference. I am one to look at that more as the gravy.
Okay.
That's my take on it, because first off, you can't ever guarantee it. I think that's one of the most important reasons why I say this. So, for example, let's say you take on a new client and you're thinking, oh, well, all of that extra stuff that I sell, I'm going to weave that into my bare minimum pricing. Well, what happens when that client doesn't want all that stuff? Because it's different every client, right? Mm-hmm. You might have some that want the most expensive drapes and someone else that doesn't. So if you're counting on the markups to meet your minimum goals, I think it can become very easy to not meet your goals.
Okay.
Whereas if you say, no, this is my hourly rate, you're compensating me for my time, and I know I'm going to meet my numbers as long as I have the clients. And hey, if I could sell you on the fabulous, hardware for the windows, and I make a little extra on that, that's terrific. That's wonderful for business, and we're going to reinvest it for next year.
So I will say to you, and of course, you have had designers as clients. It's not your niche industry, right?
Right.
So interestingly, recently I had Cheryl Clendenin. She's my friend, and I love her last name, Clendenin, on the show. Cheryl is an extremely astute businesswoman. So I'm going to share this with you because I think it may help you, too, in working with designers in the future, possibly, right? Yep. But I know it will help my friends listening. She was on the show, and she is a rock star businesswoman. She has had a retail store going on 20 years. She's been in the industry for that many years or more. And what she explained to us on her episode was that she does put in her contracts a minimum spend on product.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Right. So you've run into that before,
yes.
Right? And
yep.
What she does is she says that she specifically used it in this context. She said, because I get up every morning knowing that I have bills to pay, that I have a store, I have salary, I have inventory, I have, staff, I have all of this, I have a cost to be open number. I know that I have to do when I price a project out for a client, having a minimum required expenditure is part of the way I project my revenues for the year, and I know I'm going to stay in business, right?
Yes.
And so the thing is that, to your point, though, if she's doing maybe a repeat client and she's not doing a full-on big, scale project, that minimum might be, okay, I think this job is going to take me 10 hours, and that minimum for the product expenditures might be $10,000. But to your point, it's like she's like, I'm going to do that in my sleep in 3 days. Whereas a bigger project might be, a $40,000 or a $50,000 design fee, because there's her hours clocked into that might have a $100,000 minimum expenditure. So she's saying, okay, if I'm going to get 35% on that, and that's, $35,000, and I'm going to get $50,000 on my fees, this is an $85,000 gross revenue builder for my business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would totally, I'm on board with that as well. So, and that's actually what I meant, is that even though there's a minimum, it's being added on.
Yes. Right.
It's not like it's not getting integrated into the hourly rate.
No.
Yes.
And the thing is, that is a sophisticated level of doing business. There's no question that, based on your business expertise, your design skills and talent, and the confidence that you have in yourself, there is a moment until you're able to stand there and say, this is how it's going to run, Mr. Customer. It's going to be this and this and this. And so I don't ever say that that's easy to come out of the gate doing that. But when I know that designers are doing it, that means it's something that you can strive to do. It can be done. If somebody else is doing it, you can do it. But let's just say if we are not a firm that is really doing a lot of product sales and so forth, to your whole lesson here is to understand your gross revenue goal. So that is the big number that your firm is going to take in over the year, and how it breaks out in your cost to your expenses, your cost to be open number, what you're saving, putting aside your particular salary, and how you back it out to what your hourly is. Now, in your experience across any industry, Kim, have you ever worked this process with a client of yours and their goals for themselves, their salary and their actual real life cost to be open number, and their goals for their savings just didn't, their expertise just didn't equate to that level, that they just weren't in a position at the point in time of their expertise to say, I can charge $172 an hour? You were the two of you are looking at and going, yeah, that's probably not going to happen this year. Like, has that ever happened?
It's funny. Honestly, no.
Okay, I love it.
And I'm gonna tell you why. I've actually seen the opposite.
Yeah, mostly.
Where I've worked with people within the interior design industry who have 15, 20 years experience, and they're hesitant to raise their rates to where they need to be. Mm-hmm. That I've seen much more often. And, saying to them, well, you have all of this expertise, you have all this experience, you're great at what you do, and we've run the numbers and we see what it is that you need to be charging in order to stay in business. So my advice is usually to just own those numbers. Right. That's what you need to charge to be in business. You're not, these people aren't coming to me with crazy numbers. They don't want to have celebrity dollars coming in. They want a decent salary. They want to be able to pay their bills.
Well, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah. What I love about it, this is because we didn't put a crazy salary, right? $75,000. That's not a crazy salary. That's and what I often say to the designers that I speak with in real life is, tell me, visualize for yourself. You're in business 6 years, 8 years, 10, 12, 15, whatever it is. You know what you're capable of. You know what you bring to the table. You know that you're really working that 20 hours a week, those billable hours. You're putting a 40-hour week in, but you're managing your employees and you're doing other things that are non-billable, right? If it were your grown son or daughter and they were doing it for anything less than $75,000, what would you tell them? Right? It's sort of like, come on, you're worth that at least. And if you do have that 10, 15 years experience, you're worth $100K. You're worth $150K. Like, let's be serious. And the thing about it is that I think when you take that and break that down, that $75,000, your personal income over the year in this metric, actually represents that you must charge $172 an hour. I feel like your tool gives the ability to a designer to say, oh yeah, my 125 is dumb. I can't do that anymore. I've got to push it up. And even if you've got to push to 150 and then go to 175 in the next 6 months, I know that sometimes that we have to own what we're going to do, whatever it is that we're doing. But, the thing is, I think what I'm going to say, backwards is, without doing the exercise, I think it's easy to pretend that charging $175 an hour is a very high, exorbitant luxury rate. But $175 an hour is translating into $75,000 a year salary.
Correct.
You see?
Exactly.
That's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. That's why you run these numbers, because if you just pick a number out of a hat and you say, oh, I hear other designers, this is what they're charging, so I think that's what I'm going to charge. And you're just kind of finding a number that sounds good. You don't really have anything to base that off of. Mm-hmm. But when you run the numbers and you look at the expenses and you look at the salary and you figure out savings and you do all of these things and you have a number, you've calculated this. This is a proven number. And it becomes, I think, much easier to sell that.
Right. To yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the first person you have to sell it to, because once you believe it and once you know it, and then you back it up with what you know about your expertise, then there's no stopping you, because now it becomes what I always say: what will you do and what will you not do? The first person that doesn't want to pay the $175 an hour, well, I'm sorry. See you next out of the lane. This is what a $75,000 salary is the bare minimum I'm going to do for working 40 hours a week and creating the environment and the spaces that I'm capable of creating, and I'm just using that as a number. I think everybody should be $150K a year.
Right. And I do want to add to this too. When you come up with these numbers, one of the bumps in the road that people do run into is that when they try sometimes selling the higher number, they are met with, as you said, somebody saying, well, no, I'm not going to do it. But that doesn't mean it's not the right number. What it means is it might not be the right market.
Right. Or client in that market. Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing too is, so let's just take a second, because what if I do want to press, right? And I want to say, and in fact, I think you should be making $150K. Okay, so right there, we're not necessarily going to say, oh, so now I'm going to charge $350 an hour. That's probably a much more difficult number for 50% of the designers to be able to say out loud with a straight face, just based on my experience and asking people everywhere I go what they charge per hour, right? But the thing is, the path to that is not blocked, because the path to that then becomes scaling, right? Doesn't the path to that become, now I've got a junior who I am billing out at 125, but I'm paying 45 an hour to work. And so I'm now multiplying the billable hours in my firm, that I don't necessarily, to make 150K, take my hours and say, okay, I'm $400 an hour, right? Am I on the right track here?
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. So if you wanted to use simple numbers, you could say, well, okay, I have 4 people underneath me and I'm making $100 off of each of one of them. And therefore I'm making the $400, but I have 4 people that are getting paid the 40. Yes, exactly.
I love it. Exactly. You see, there's a way to get to everywhere we want to go. But the idea is we set the strategic plan to get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love it. I think it's so awesome. I just, once you do all this, Kim, then there is that intangible. That's that really feeling it and knowing that you are worthy of it and that you really deserve it, right? So that's one thing. But then the second thing is the commitment to, if you did your whole metric on 20 billable hours a week, you got to be measuring your hours every week, and you can't wake up on the 3rd or 4th week of the month and say, I only did 10 hours a week each week, because then the whole thing is going to be a house of cards to fall down too. So we have to be accountable to ourselves on what we actually set as our goals and how we get there. Agree?
Yes. And I would add to that it's really important to track your hours in general, because it makes billing so much easier. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that with a lot of the newer business owners, but even some people who have been in business for a few years, what happens a lot of times is they're so busy working that they might not be the best at tracking what they're doing. And then when they're building their business and they get new clients in that promise bigger jobs like they've never done before, they'll come to me and say, Kim, I don't even know how to bill for this, right? Because I've never done a job like this. And the reason that they might not know is because they haven't done a great job of tracking it in the past. And you need those numbers to be able to grow and move forward and say, okay, well, a job similar to this, it cost me about this much hours. So if this job is going to be 3 times much, okay. And then you have some numbers to work with.
Right. Well, and that goes into the category that I like to call be prepared to be lucky. Right?
Yeah.
If you have been doing the hard work all along and you're consistently getting 30, 40, 50, 60, $80,000 projects, but you are tracking those hours every time, even well past the point that you think you need to. When that $500,000 project comes in, you're going to have some data to sit there and really look at and go, how should I charge for this so that I serve myself, my employees, my business, and my client? And even if you don't have the you don't have the confidence to analyze the data yourself, it's something you can take to a coach or to a business strategist and say, this is an opportunity I have. This is what I've been doing. What's your, opinion? Help me sort through this, right?
Yeah,
or even a colleague.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah. And just start somewhere, even if it's, a simple spreadsheet. And you just start, categorizing a few things and just say, yep, I spent this many hours doing this much this week, something to track your time. And you can always go into somebody else and say, here are my spreadsheets. Here are my numbers. Here's what I got. Make sense of it all.
I love it. It's so good, so clear, so straightforward. So I mentioned your podcast, Kim, but you have just recently retired your podcast.
Yep,
but,
after 4 years.
Right,
yes.
we have 4 years of shows to listen to. So that's what we love about podcasts. They're evergreen. So tell us that, just in case we do want to find it on iTunes or wherever, and tell us the other ways to connect with you.
Yep. So it is everywhere. It is the Sassy Strategist podcast, and you can find it pretty much all over iTunes, Spotify, all the typical platforms. And my website is kdawsonco.com, and you can learn more about me there. And feel free to reach out, on the web and send me a message.
I love it. I thank you so much for having this conversation with us again. I'm sure that it was eye-opening to more than a few of us out there, and we appreciate your spending your time with us today, Kim.
Well, thank you, Luann. I really appreciate your time as well. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
So the big message from Kim today is to always start with the numbers, because when you do this, you can strategize and plan to accomplish your goals, not simply hope for them or wish for them or wonder about them or actually not even think about them. Right? So start with your cost to be open number, as the Vin Man calls it. Then determine the salary that you want to earn this year. And finally, plug in the savings you should be planning on. Together, this is the basis for you running your business, not your business running you. Okay? You can do this. And if you go to Kim's website, it's kdawsonco.com. She's got a worksheet there that you can follow and go through with this, sort of what we just did on the show, but you can spend some more time on it, okay? All right, so I know that you can do this, and I realize if you have not approached your business with this much intention or clarity before, it might be daunting, or maybe you think it won't work. But I'm here to tell you it does work. If you decide to do these steps, you may fail, but get back on track because it will work. You would never start and approach an interior design project without a plan, would you? You would never. You would never look at a client's living room, dining room, bedroom, whatever, and then just go into, a trade showroom and just start ordering furniture, or go online and just start ordering fabrics. You would never do that. You know that you have to gather all the information. You have to do the proper numbers. They might be measurements in that case, right? But then you have to make a plan and intend what that room is going to look like at the end of it. It's the same thing with your business, okay? You can decide how much money you will earn this year, and you can make it happen. I know that this is real. I know that this is not theory and offhand conversation. This is legitimate business strategy. And I encourage you now to also listen to these other episodes, because each of these, in a way, touches on very similar topics and how-tos for doing this. You never know which piece of information will resonate with you, or which discussion may carry a bit more detail or another aspect of this strategy that when you hear it, along with Kim's advice, you get that aha moment, okay? So these are the shows that go with this one. Krista Cooper, number 60. Kim Merlitti, number 361 and number 442. Alinda Morris, number 429. Cheryl Clendenin, number 482. Michelle Williams, number 395, and just for bonus good luck, Kay Whitaker, number 114. We did an entire show on how to evaluate your business at year end and to set goals for the new year. So you know Kay, always lots of good information. All right. Now, it's not too late to sign up for Profit with Window Treatments. We will be starting on January 15th, and you know exactly how I feel about this and why I asked Vita to teach this course. It is because I know one of the single most effective ways to earn more money for you is to sell more things to the same clients. They already know you, they already trust you, they already like the way you handle your business. So as an interior designer, if you're not capitalizing on all the money to be made by confidently offering window treatments to your clients, this 8-week live course is for you. Go to profitwithwindowtreatments.com and get the details. All the topics that will be discussed over the 8 weeks are all right there on the website, okay? And our podcast sponsor, Kirsch, is also here to help you make more money on your existing projects by specifying Kirsch brand top quality, beautifully designed drapery hardware. You know your clients' custom window treatments will be stylish, functional, and well-made. Go to Kirsch.com to find your local distributor. Lastly, if you do want to know more about window treatments and how to effectively add them to your projects, I would suggest definitely do the Profit with Window Treatments course with Vita. And then at the end of that course, join Vita and myself and Kirsch at the IWCE in Charlotte this March. We would love to meet you, and you will love all the seminars and all of the information about window treatments that you can learn on the vendor floor. Links for all of these will be in the show notes. All right. We're back in the saddle, as they say. It is the first week of January 2020. I hope you are taking it very serious to be profitable this year. I hope that you are planning to be profitable this year. I really hope that every day you decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.